There is a brutal fact about the post-1945 world order, the American-led world order, that most people are missing. That gets left out of many of the stories about the American century, the American rules-based international liberal order. That brutal fact, as John Mearsheimer likes to say, is that world order was not based just on institutions. It wasn't just based on shared values. It was based on the partition of Eurasia. That's what I want to talk about in this video. My name's Jeff Rich. This is the Burning Archive, where I talk about world history and the big historical trends that lie behind geopolitical events today. You can read my weekly insights, book recommendations, and slow reads at jeffrich.substack.com and support my work if anything in this video resonates with you by becoming a paid subscriber. Let's look at the partition of Eurasia. So as American influence wanes around the world, its size of its economy, its success in wars, all those kind of things, a critical question emerges. What will become of the web of divisions, alliances, and military deployments that have contained Eurasia, not just the Soviet Union, that have contained Eurasia since 1945. This is the partition of Eurasia. The post-World War II era, people often say, began with Yalta, but it did not clearly implement the agreements at Yalta, the vision of the United Nations Charter, and in any case, those agreements were really great power agreements between the United States, the British Empire, and the Soviet Union. They perhaps are not such a great model for great power politics, a new Yalta III in 2025. They did not fulfill the new post-1945 world order, did not fulfill the United Nations promise of a world of equal sovereign nations without empire. Instead, the United States of America established an historically unprecedented phenomenon. This is the brutal fact that the post-1945 world order was really based on the domination of the Eurasian landmass by an external power. For the first time, at both ends of Eurasia, east and west, the first time ever in world history that an external power to Eurasia controlled the two ends of Eurasia in that way. This partition of Eurasia was enforced through a series of strategic, tragic partitions that continue to shape global politics today. America partitioned Eurasia. 80 years later, many people around the world hoping for some sort of enduring peace, whether in Ukraine or in West Asia, in Gaza and Israel and Palestine, in India and Pakistan, in South Korea and North Korea, in Taiwan. People who live and care for these partitions enforced by the United States of America are wondering whether it is not time, 80 years after the partition of Eurasia, for America finally to withdraw from Eurasia. As historian John Darwin observed in After Tamerlane, The Rise and Fall of Global Empires from 1400 to 2000, the end of the Second World War left a lot of unresolved tensions across Eurasia. He wrote that just as there was no agreed post-war order to settle the future in Europe, so there would be no general settlement to end the war in East Asia. Of course, more than 10 million people died in China in the enormous wars in East Asia during the Second World War. Instead, the United States began, with the Soviet Union as well, a Cold War and reorganised the Eurasian political landscape. Partitions, military occupations, and de facto control of sovereign states like Japan were established in Europe, West Asia, South Asia, East Asia, and the Western Pacific, all the cardinal points of Eurasia. The scope of this restructuring was truly astonishing. In Europe, the Cold War divided not just Germany, but an entire subcontinent between East and West. Since the end of the Cold War, that division has not really gone away. It has just moved eastwards, and in part that is what the fight in Ukraine is all about. In East Asia, American military officers drew an arbitrary line at the 38th parallel, splitting Korea, a centuries-old great state, into North and South, a division later cemented by a truly tragic war in which millions died, and which perversely the United States celebrates as the model of a frozen conflict. The region was further partitioned between US-aligned unsinkable aircraft carriers like Japan, the Philippines and Taiwan, and mainland China, which American officials would lament as being lost to them. In West and South Asia, with British support, the US helped establish new geopolitical divisions: Israel and the Arab states, Iran and Iraq, India and Pakistan. These partitions were not merely lines on a map. They created enduring zones of tension that have generated decades of conflict and human suffering. US strategists often refer to these as frozen conflicts, but in the past decade, violence or dangerous confrontations have broken through the ice in Ukraine, the Taiwan Strait, the West Pacific, the Korean Peninsula, and West Asia. Today, the sustainability of this system faces mounting challenges. The cost of maintaining approximately 800 military bases in at least 55 countries, combined with endless military interventions, has extracted a heavy toll on American society, culture and politics, and a great impost on the rest of the world. The US economy and military, though still powerful, can no longer sustain such a sprawling global presence without severe domestic consequences, or the imposition of unacceptable costs on its allies. The USA under Biden and Trump have demanded allies pay more. The US Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, came to the Ukraine Defense Contact Group in 2025 as a debt collector, demanding Europe more than double its defence spending as a down payment for, quote, peace through strength. In the same week, President Trump demanded Ukraine repay years of US support by giving up its rare earth mineral deposits. America offered no reparations for the blood price paid by Ukrainians. European allies are questioning the costs they pay for the American partition, such as the severed pipelines of Nord Stream. Even in Australia, on the edge of Eurasia, many question the cost of AUKUS and nuclear submarines deployed in the service of the USA, threatening our major trading partner China and enforcing the American partition of Eurasia in the South China Sea. Growing costs and new realities prompt questions across Eurasia. Why should American troops and military facilities remain in our territories? When will they depart? Why maintain artificial divisions with our neighbours, our families, our friends that were imposed by an external power nearly 8 decades ago? The familiar American justification, we fight them over there so we don't need to fight them over here, rings increasingly hollow to local populations seeking regional reconciliation and more collaborative partners. The shift is already visible. Recent discussions between Russia and Chinese leadership about establishing collective security in Eurasia without external powers represent a direct challenge to the post-war American system. The outcome of the conflict in Ukraine is undermining American primacy. More such challenges will likely follow. The scale of American military power projection across Eurasia has no historical precedent, but neither does its potential withdrawal. The sheer enormity of the USA's global military presence can lead to misreading diplomatic signals. Some commentators believe the Trump administration is retreating from the US empire while consolidating its sphere of influence. But to date, all the USA has done is to demand others pay its bills. There's no talk of closing bases, at least not yet, or resolving frozen conflicts like Korea, like Taiwan. Ultimately, the unsustainable partition of Eurasia will force the hand of US leaders. Reluctantly, they will manage the inevitable reduction of their military leviathan. The process of American retrenchment may well define the first half of the 21st century, just as decolonisation defined the post-1945 world. The transition brings both enormous risks and great opportunities. The US appears to want to prioritise its military hold at the moment over Eastern Eurasia. US Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth claims China has the capability and intent to threaten our homeland and core national interests, whatever they are, in the Indo-Pacific. When he says core national interests, he means the partition of Eurasia. Withdrawal from Europe, however, may bring intensified conflict with China. The withdrawal of such extensive military presence and political influence could trigger significant regional instabilities if not managed carefully. The USA's demands that Europe abandon decent social policies to pay more for American might, or the USA's reckless and cavalier sudden withdrawal from Ukraine after years of engaging in conflict there. Both of those things could exacerbate long-buried tensions between Western partners. We have seen those tensions break out over the last few weeks. But withdrawal also opens the possibilities for new forms of regional cooperation and conflict resolution that were previously constrained by external interests or beliefs that the West knows best. The Singaporean diplomat Kishore Mahbubani has recently pointed out that if ASEAN, a much less wealthy association of states, a much less integrated association of states than the European Union, can manage effectively its relationship with its neighbour, rival, partner, China, then surely the European Union can do so in a way perhaps with rather less intervention from the United States of America. The world is witnessing the end of an extraordinary historical anomaly. That historical anomaly is the partition and partial control of Eurasia by a non-Eurasian power. The challenge lies ahead in managing this transition while minimising the risk of catastrophic conflict, not just World War III, but other catastrophic conflicts like, indeed, the war in Ukraine. Success will require wisdom and restraint from all parties involved, as well as the recognition that the post-1945 order, however long-lasting, was always temporary, that the partition of Eurasia was never sustainable for more than 80 years. Euro-Atlantic countries will need to acknowledge that the principles of the United Nations Charter were never faithfully implemented in the US-led world order. The global majority will increasingly shape this transition, and the global majority includes not just the leaders of the big countries of the world, but also the citizens of so many of these countries around the world, these citizens who have been the long-suffering victims of the American partition of Eurasia. That global majority will increasingly shape this transition. Their voices and interests will be central to whatever new regional and global arrangements emerge. The question is not whether change will come, but how and when. If a peaceful resolution of the Ukraine conflict, if a negotiated resolution of the Ukraine conflict leads to a process to establish genuine collective security in Europe, then surely East Asia and the Western Pacific can thrive without the American partition. Eurasia can secure its strength through peace, not through US military bases. Thanks for watching.